We appreciate the hope. Today, what we're going to talk about is prickly pear biology and management. And this webinar is going to be divided up into a few parts. We're going to talk about the biology of prickly pear, exactly what it is and how we manage prickly pear, and also how it spreads throughout the area like it does. And then towards the end of the webinar, we're going to start talking about the management, some of the research that we've conducted on prickly pear over the past couple of years, and some of the new products that you're about to start seeing that can be used for the management of prickly pear. Let's start out this webinar with a quick quiz. How many people have a guess of how many species/variety of prickly pear there are throughout the state? Pete, if you were to go and pop out the poll, everybody take a guess. This may surprise some of y'all. Okay, we are getting quite a few replies. Alrighty, here we go. The correct answer is B. There is about 40 different species/varieties of prickly pear throughout the state. 25 of them are named, 15 are distant or named varieties. Different species and varieties, they are extremely different to identify. However, though management practices do not differ among the different species of prickly pear, what it takes to manage one prickly pear plant will be the same for another prickly pear. Some of the basic biology of prickly pear is they have large pads that store large amounts of water. This enables the prickly pear plants to withstand long periods of drought. You know, if many people remember the drought of 2011, prickly pear was not impacted. If anything, I think after 2011, we've seen an increase in a prickly pear. The pads also can be modified stems, and they have the ability to conduct photosynthesis. So it's not like a tree where they have the wooden trunk, branches, and then leaves. The whole plant conducts photosynthesis. Each plant has the ability to become a new plant. Each pad. We're going to dig a little bit more into that here in a minute. And prickly pear also across throughout the state. I've talked to some county extension agents in East Texas, in the Huntsville area, Palestine, and they claim they are seeing more prickly pear now than what they have in the past years. Something else, keep in mind that it is a common invader of grassland. Let's look a little bit at prickly pear cactus identification. Prickly pear, we have a few different types. Plains prickly pear and Texas prickly pear. Then we also have Tassajia, Choya, and others. We're not going to talk about all those other ones. We'd be here all day. Here is the plains prickly pear. It grows lower to the ground, smaller pads. Some people oftentimes think of this as a little bit harder to kill, and one of those reasons is if you have a lot of grass growing around it, you got to get the herbicide down to that prickly pear. So something to think about. Here is the bigger Texas prickly pear. Grows more upright, larger pads. Well, oftentimes we can see this growing up in the fence lines. See it growing up on the rangeland, very common throughout the state. Here is the Tassajia, also known as jumping cactus and turkey pear. One of those that if you get close to it, it has the ability to jump out and grab you. Not the funnest plant to be around. However, any of the herbicides that have any effect on prickly pear will also control this. The cholla common up in the Panhandle as well as in far west Texas. Okay, we have another question right here regarding prickly pear and livestock. Lots of people think prickly pear is a common source of food for livestock. Does anybody want to give me the ideas of what you think? We got A, yes, it is a high quality feed. B, no, livestock will not eat it. C, they will eat it, but it's not high quality. All right, 72% say C. And now we're going to look at the next slide. And you're correct. They will eat prickly pear. However, if your livestock is eating prickly pear, you have other range management problems. You most likely grazed off all the grass, you overgrazed, and now you have cattle consuming prickly pear, which is a pretty good sign you degraded your rangeland. Something else about cattle eating prickly pear is also kind of labor intensive. Somebody has to go through and remove the spines. So livestock, prickly pear can serve as a backup food source. However, I don't recommend it. Wildlife. Wildlife, prickly pear can serve as a food source. Lots of different things eat the tunas, the berries, and it can also serve as a protective and nesting cover for different wildlife species. So here we have another question. Does prickly pear have a high value for wildlife? I just told you the answer. Let's see how many people were listening. 100%. 10 people, 16. Well, we got 90% of the respondents saying yes, it does. So if we skip on, let's look at the facts. In South Texas, white-tailed deer, 21% of the diet. In the summertime, though, we analyzed the diet, and they found that it was higher in a prickly pear due to the water content. So throughout the summertime, deer in South Texas were consuming 33%, 1/3 of their diet in a prickly pear. Edwards Plateau, not as high. Looking at javelina, they will eat a large amount of prickly pear. Bobwhite quail, they will utilize prickly pear for food and cover. So let's dig in and look at the bobwhite quail and how they can utilize prickly pear a little bit more. Prickly pear can serve as a nest site. The data suggests that nest survival can be increased by using prickly pear to nest in, and I apologize for that typo there on my slide. Bobwhite seem to resort in prickly pear for nesting when other sites are not available. If you're a quail guy, this is another reason why to use some good grazing practices while managing livestock and leave some of those desirable bunch grasses such as little blue stem, silver blue stem for the quail to nest in. A common rule of thumb we used to use when estimating nest sites is you need a bunch grass the size of a basketball goal, or you need a prickly pear the size of a hula hoop. So let's look at some of the prickly pear problems with livestock. It will limit the forage production. It interferes with livestock movement. You have a large amount of nutrient and water competition that the prickly pear gives. Lots of times if we look up underneath the prickly pear, you don't see any grass growing under that. Sometimes you will see some weight loss from livestock from eating the tunas until they're gone. And also that can lead to ulceration the small spines of the mouth as well as in the digestive tract. Something else to keep in mind, the amount of Pricklypear required to meet the livestock requirements would be 100 to 200 pounds per day. Very large amount of Pricklypear would be needed to meet the body requirements of a cow. If we break it down to Pricklypear and look at the chemical analysis, you will see over here where 80% of those pads are wattle. And then if we look over here, we see that it does have some other stuff. We have a little bit of crude protein, but 4% is not significant. So all in all, Pricklypear is a very poor source of livestock feed. If you are going through and burning off the spines to feed your livestock Pricklypear, you have other problems. So let's look at some of the forage value problems. High water content, high calcium and magnesium, the H2O gut retention can lead to scouts. Faster passes. Anytime you're trying to feed any type of livestock feed, the more you can slow it down throughout that animal's GI tract, the better nutrient absorption will be. But because of the amount of water, it has a very fast passage rate, which equals a very poor nutrient absorption. Low crude protein affects rumen function, therefore can lead to paraballs, low phosphorus, and high calcium. So I think we've established that Pricklypear is not a good feed for livestock. So let's look at some of the problems that Pricklypear can cause for wildlife. Limits the ease of travel, limits the plant diversity, competition for water and nutrients, and restricts the forage access. Something I'd like to bring up is I'm sure lots of times you've had hunters complain about the amount of Pricklypear that you have growing there in your pasture. Okay, we're talking about how invasive Pricklypear can be, but to put some numbers to that, let's look at how Pricklypear can spread. This was from a study conducted in San Angelo a long time ago by a range scientist named Daryl Eckert. And what his study showed was that a Pricklypear pad weighing 0.7 pounds has the potential to become a 69 pad plant weighing 70 pounds in 7 years. Yes, guys, Pricklypear can be very invasive. And the reason that it is so invasive is because of this right here. If we look at this pad, once this pad is on the ground, it can start putting on roots and becoming a new plant. If you look at this right here, you'll see the pad was laying on the ground, it rooted, and is putting on new pads. These right here are the roots that it was developing underneath the ground. Lots of times, some of the common range management practices, such as chaining, roll chopping, cabling, root plowing, shredding, all can increase Pricklypear spreading 2 to 3 times. Grubbing can increase it as well. And any type of mechanical disturbance out on rangeland with Pricklypear, it can have a negative effect on the spread of Pricklypear. Okay, now we're going to start looking into some types of control methods that we have for Pricklypear. This picture right here lists lots of different controls. This right here is what I like to call the organic method. I got to do quite a bit of this in high school and really have no desire to do that. Over here we have an ATV with a couple of spray runs. Guys are doing IPT. helicopter or airplane, some common methods. And here we have some ground broadcast treatments of pricklypear. So to look at kind of the history of pricklypear control, where it all started. It all started with this herbicide right here known as picloram. It was discovered in 1963. We've been using it ever since. It is safe around grasses. Picloram has no effect on grasses. However, it's a very slow herbicide. It can take up to 3 years to reach any level of mortality. Some of the common trade names of picloram are Tordon 22K, Triple 22K, picloram, and others. This is not a complete list. It's some of the common ones that I put on this slide. Okay, then we skip ahead a couple of years, go back to 1998. Fluroxapyr was another molecule that was discovered, and it was found to have quite a bit of activity on pricklypear. It was mixed with picloram in the early 2000s, and when we mixed the two together, we saw an increase in the speed of mortality than using picloram Tordon 22K alone. Once again, though, no effect on grasses. We're going to look at that here in a minute. Okay, now the newest chemistry. This herbicide right here, active ingredient known as aminopyrrolate, was registered in the US in 2005. In 2013, we started looking at mixing this with picloram and fluroxapyr to see how we could improve pricklypear mortality. It allows for lower usage rates. It's not effective on grasses. And this product will be released in January of 2018 under the trade name of invasive. So here on this slide right here, we have a bunch of different lists, bunch of different products, a list of the common pricklypear control herbicides. Invasive, it contains picloram, fluroxapyr, and aminopyrrolate. Surmount, it only contains the fluroxapyr, and then all these down here are just straight picloram products, with the exception of grassland L, which contains 2,4-D. So quite a bit of options to pick from when doing any type of pricklypear control. Okay, I told you that the pricklypear herbicides have no effect on the grass. If we look right here, this pricklypear is sprayed, and if we look at this grass plant right here, we already see some bite marks where the livestock has been grazing it. Something to bring up is how accessible was these grass plants before spraying. Right there's another picture of some little blue stem that was growing where a pricklypear plant was sprayed. See the dead pricklypear? No effect on the grass. Okay, now we're going to get into some of the current recommendations and methods for pricklypear spraying. Individual plant treatment, commonly referred to as IPT. It's recommended that you have an X8 cone-jet spray nozzle, 12 to 24-inch spray wand, and a pump-up spray tank or an electric pump. The spray mixer that you will see in lots of extension literature is 1% surmount. That was the old brush buster treatment and very effective. Also recommended to use some surfactant as well as some blue dye to see the coverage. When doing this method, you need to spray both sides of the pads, and that's where the blue dye comes in to help you out. Okay, so now let's look at some types of broadcast method. Aerial or ground broadcast, you can apply at any time. Late summer through winter though is optimal timing. Toward 22K, if you're going to use that, the recommended rate is 32 ounces, 1 quart to the acre. Surmount, double the rate, 64 ounces. By air, you need to use 4 to 5 gallons a total spray volume. By ground, 10 to 15, and there's some cases of people going as high as 20 when doing ground broadcasts for prickly pear control. You also need to add in some type of methylated seed oil or COC, crop oil concentrate, as a spray adjuvant surfactant. Another recommendation that we have for prickly pear is prescribed fire. This works well. What you would do is you'd conduct a prescribed fire right about now, this time of year. Then you'd wait for the prickly pear pad size to become approximately 2 inches on regrowth. Or you could spray it within 5 months of the barn. The benefit of using this method is this right here. You could cut the rates of these herbicides in half and still get a good kill. So what you're essentially doing is doing a 1 to 2 punch. You're going to kick the prickly pear with the fire, wait till those pads start to regrow, and then you're going to hit them with some herbicide. So you'll have the benefits of the fire, lots of other benefits right there utilizing the prescribed barn. Then you also have the benefit of the cost savings using less herbicide to control your prickly pear. We're going to look a little bit at the cost of some of these various prickly pear control methods. Surmount is always the cheapest individual plant treatment. Tordon is the cheapest broadcast treatment because of the reduced rate. Pastoral Guard HL, and there was another product known as Vesta XRT. These right here are more expensive. However, no license is required to use these herbicides. Something I like to keep in mind though when talking about the cost of controlling prickly pear. If you are in the livestock business, you can grow a lot of grass underneath a mesquite tree. However, no grass will grow underneath the prickly pear. Okay, now we're going to talk about a couple of different research projects that I've had the opportunity to be involved in. In one of these projects, we were looking to find something that was unrestricted, that anybody could buy, no license needed, and that could be used on a prickly pear. So what happened was the research began in 2012. The trials were established in Wise, Ellis, Jack, Brown, and Somerville counties. And what we did, we compared the Pastoral Guard HL to the current standards of Surmount and Tordon 22K. Keep in mind the objective was to find a product that required no license that would be effective on a prickly pear. In January of 2015, Pastoral Guard HL was labeled for prickly pear use. It does not require a private applicator's license, and it is safer to use around desirable trees due to this product not having any picloram in it. This product is made up of the active ingredients Pricklypear and Fluoxapyr. Right here are the results comparing Pastoral Guard to the other 3 commonly prickly pear treatments. You can see we were getting 85, nearly 90% control with pastoral guard at 12 months after treatment. Those are pictures of some of the dead pricklypear with pastoral guard. Very good to kill. Once again, and no activity on the grass. And there's the end result of that research. You'll see that's two EE recommendations for control of cactus pricklypear with individual plant treatments. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the timing of the pricklypear control. When is the best time to treat pricklypear? We know that treatment prior to rainfall accelerates mortality. We also know there's some advantages to aerial treatment during the mosquito dormant season, less canopy interception. There's also an advantage to broadcast treatment in late winter for weed control. And I feel like there's an advantage to IPT during the dormant season due to less green being in the pasture. What this will lead to is you'll spot and see a lot more pricklypear plants. This picture right here was some plots that we sprayed out around Abilene. And you can see right here is the plots. And what you can see is that we got really good weed control from the pricklypear treatment. All of this weeds right in here are common broomweed. Into these plots, here's a plot there and here's a plot over here. We have no common broomweed, which in turn led to increased grass production. So we got control of the broomweed. However, we also got long-term control of the pricklypear. If we look at the cost of various products, what I did is I based some on a 15-gallon herbicide mix, with the exception of the broadcast treatment, which is based on the per acre. All cost and estimates, all subject to change. However, 15 gallons of this amount would have been around 11 to 12 bucks. Turbine's a little bit more expensive. Pastoral guard slightly more expensive, but keep in mind no license is required. Vista is a product that we have not talked much about. However, it's very active on pricklypear, but due to the cost is the reason we don't talk a lot about it. Also keep in mind these two broadcast treatments. Once a pasture has 300 to 400 plants per acre, these broadcast treatments become more economical than doing any type of IPT treatments. This graph right here shows when you're better off to do a broadcast treatment than to do an IPT. And if we say right here, this needs to be updated, that aerial's going to cost right around 25. You'll see at 400 plants per acre, you're better off to do a broadcast treatment and treat the whole pasture instead of doing an IPT. Okay, now we're going to talk about another research project that I've been involved with for the past couple of years. And that started off in the fall of 2013. And the project will be released this coming winter spring of 2019. And what it is, I refer to it as the Mesa View project. It used to be Dye AgriSciences, now it's Corteva AgriScience is releasing a new product known as Mesa View. And this is the product that we talked about earlier that contains the picoram, fluroxypyr, and aminopyrrolide. 3 active ingredients in 1 herbicide. As you can see right here at this table, it talks about how many trials we've conducted in getting this product established, and ultimately labeled. In 2013, I only did 3 ground broadcast trials. You go through the years, you'll see we've put out numerous trials, and you see we have some very reliable data due to these trials. A quick overview of how we conducted this research. For the individual plant treatment, we treated both sides of the pads. We looked at all the data and we came out with a recommended rate of 1%, or 1.28 ounces per gallon. You still need to use a surfactant, non-ionic surfactant, NIS, or a methylated seed oil surfactant. Use a blue dye to see the coverage while spraying. So this right here are some of the IPT studies that we did, and we spread these around throughout the state. And here are some of the recent studies that we did within the past couple of years. Callahan, Koch, Hamilton, Reagan, and up to Young County. Okay, right here is the data, the results that we got from this individual plant treatment pricklypear study using the herbicide invasive. What do you see right here are these box and whisker charts. The wider the box is, the more variation that you have in terms of how the plants responded to being treated with that herbicide. What you see is we did a rate study. We looked at invasive at 0.25%, at 0.5%, at 0.75, and then at 1%. We compared that to Surmount and Tordon 22K. As you can see right there, the 1% was very consistent and offering excellent results. Compare that to the current standards. Surmount at Tordon 22K. While these were given a good mortality rate, look at the variation among it. Not nearly as consistent. And also look at the various rates of invasive. The 0.75 did good, but not as consistent. Another thing to keep in mind is this right here is only at 12 months after treatment. Here are some of the pixels of the IPT individual plant treatment sites on pricklypear that we sprayed. We started out with the pricklypear looking like this, and we quickly led it to it looking like this within 1 year. Can you pick out the plants that were sprayed and not sprayed? Now we're going to talk about the broadcast aspect of the study. After the study, we decided that the recommended rate needed to be 32 ounces, 1 quart per acre. The recommended total spray volume was 20 gallons per acre. Recommended total spray volume by air would be 4 gallons per acre. It's best to treat prior to a rainfall event, and if treated by air, it's also best to treat prior to the mesquite trees leafing out. And it will also control annual broadleaf weeds if treated early in the spring. For the ground broadcast, we conducted these at 3 different locations: Mills, Eastland, and down in Sutton County. And here's the results. You can see we did a rate study as well. 8 ounces per acre, 16 ounces to the acre, 24 ounces, and 32 ounces. We compared it to the standard rates of Surmount and Tordon 22K. As you can see, the 8-ounce rate was not good. We improved slightly with the 16. 24 looked okay. It was comparable to the Tordon or Surmount. However, the 32 ounce rate at 1 year after treatment was pretty close to 90% control. Excellent control with half the amount of herbicide that we used to use with surmount. You can see we applied to these plots a variety of arrays. We had a few different types of spray rigs. And to all the pixels. As you can see in this picture, it is not 100% dead. We still have some Pricklypear plants left out there. However, keep in mind, look at the untreated. And also, I expect this to continue to decline as we go from 1 to 2 years out. Here is a picture of a site up around growth rate. You can see right there we have a little bit of Pricklypear on this plot, but look at the untreated. Excellent Pricklypear control throughout that plot. Here is a zoomed in photo of some of the ground broadcasts looking at it. And you can see the Pricklypear right there is what we found left. Very impressive results for only 1 year out. Something else we did was we were looking at the oak tolerance. While this product still has some picloram in it, it has less picloram than Tordon 22K or surmount. This product right there, being that it has less of those active ingredients, the thought is let's test it to see if it's safer to use around oak trees. So what we did is we found a site there around Brady that the landowner was willing to risk some level of oak damage to his oak trees for us to determine the oak tolerance of this product, Invasive. What we did is we compared Tordon, surmount, 24 ounces of Invasive, as well as 32 ounces of Invasive. And you can see the blue as the Pricklypear desiccation. And you can also see the orange as the canopy reduction at 1 month, canopy reduction at 4 months as the gray, yellow as 8 months, and the green is 14 months out. What I want you to look at is we're still getting a very high level of Pricklypear control, 78%, but look at the level of oak tree damage. 11% oak tree damage compared to 20 or 28%. I also want you to notice that we still defoliated the oak trees with this Invasive. Within a month to 4 months after we sprayed it, they looked pretty rough. At 8 months, they were starting to grow out of it. At 14 months, they looked very good. Okay, Pete, I see we have one question in the chat box about a white powdery looking fungus on a Pricklypear that seems to kill it over time. Do I know what it is? I've seen that fungus throughout the state. It's very isolated. It does seem to cause a little bit of damage to some Pricklypear, but I have not seen widespread die-offs as a result of this fungus. Okay, continuing on with the oak tree tolerance. If you look at this picture right here, you'll see this oak trees in the background. And then look at the Pricklypear up in front. How we were able to control the Pricklypear and have very little effect on the oak trees. Something else to mention, none of the oak trees in any of these treatments were killed by using any of these herbicides. While we did defoliate some, while some still had a degree of defoliation at the year out, every one of the oak trees was alive and looking okay, and I suspect they'll continue to improve the farther we get from the treatment. So to kind of summarize up the Mesa view, Mesa view at 1% was the most consistent. And it also at 1% provided the highest level of control. The broadcast rate of Mesa view at 32 ounces per acre was more consistent than surmount. Something also to keep in mind that Mesa view at 32 ounces provided a higher level of control than Tordon 22K. This also had a better live oak tolerance as well as better oak recovery. So we have some definite benefits from using the Mesa view. We have some options that it provides us with that surmount and Tordon 22K did not provide us with. Some other facts to keep in mind on Pricklypear. Typically at 300 to 400 plants per acre, broadcast treatments are more economical than IPT treatments. However, IPT requires the most labor, it's the most costly, but it also delivers the greatest mortality. The broadcast is less labor, less costly, and less mortality. Also keep in mind that aerial is less costly than ground broadcast. However, this is also dependent on the size of acres being treated. It's very common to see a 20 to 50 acre pasture infested with pricklypear. For a small area like that, you're a lot better to consider some type of ground broadcast. However, let's say you have 200 to 500 acres infested with pricklypear. At that point, you're better off to discuss some type of aerial treatment. With that, that is all the information that I had for y'all today in today's webinar. Does anybody have any questions about anything that we covered today? I see we have a few people typing in their questions.
Yeah, I see a few questions coming in.
Bob asked, is Mesa View going to be retricketed? Yes, because Mesa View has still some picloram in it. It is going to be retricketed. Patricia asked, when will Mesa View be available? Patricia, what I've been told with the Mesa View is they'll have it available in large totes starting in January. However, 1 gallon jugs will not be available until March. Dan asked, can I manually remove plants successfully? Yes, Dan, you can. If you dig up a pricklypear, grub it up, you'll see some roots, as well as some tuberous type roots. They resemble potatoes up underneath the ground. If you remove that pricklypear will not be growing back. However, when managing pricklypear, when removing it, you must pick up all the pads. Alan asked, in one slide you had the application rate higher for broadcast than aerial. Why is that? Well, Alan, one reason ground broadcast, the amount of herbicide per acre is the same, being it for spraying it with a tractor or airplane. If you're using surmount, you still need to use 62 ounces to the acre. However, when we're spraying out of the back of a tractor, you cannot drive fast enough to get good coverage and still spray 4 to 5 gallons per acre. On the flip side, you cannot slow an airplane down slow enough to spray 20 gallons to the acre. And because of that, that's one reason we recommend going with an increased amount of spray volume by ground. You get better coverage. However, by ground, you'll also get better mortality. Susan asked, where is the best place to dispose of a container of surmount, which is several years old, pre-mixed with dye surfactant? Susan, I'm going to refer you to talk to your local county extension agent. They will be able to help you. Justin has the question, I have some prickly pear cactus with some brown and black spots on it. Is that a disease for cactus, and will it spread and kill the cactus? Justin, I've seen that quite a bit around the hill country. It's some type of fungus. It does not appear to kill the cactus. However, it does kind of stunt it. If you cut into that cactus, take out your pocket knife, I bet you that cactus will look very healthy on the inside. And Elise has a question about mechanically damaging the pads during cold weather. I have not heard of damaging the pads well below freezing killing it. However, there are some stories of people mechanically damaging the pads, then following up with spraying it. What this does do is it allows for easier access of the herbicides into the plants. I heard one story of a guy taking a shotgun, shooting the prickly pear, then spraying it. While doing that, I'm not sure who it helped more, the landowner or the prickly pear. Pete brings up a good point. Is there a grazing restriction with invasive? You know there will not be any grazing restrictions, but because of the amino pyrrolate being in it, it will have some manure restrictions. Michael says, this being January, when can I begin a surmount IPT? Anytime, Michael. January, February is a good time to hand spray prickly pear for a couple of reasons. One is we typically get some spring rains that will accelerate that rate of mortality. Another reason is you'll see a lot more of those green prickly pears plants growing this time of year. Alrighty, I think we're caught up on the questions.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and wait, see any more questions pop up. I'm gonna go ahead and pop out a survey, and please complete the survey. The responses are anonymous, and information is used to measure impact and improve our future webinars. As we wait for further questions, let me say that our next webinar is going to be on February 7th, 2019. Trouble mustards in Texas, and Dr. Baron Richter is going to be our speaker. Again, if you're not following us, you can follow us on Facebook. We have an educational page on Facebook. It's facebook.com/txrange, and we normally post twice a week with some kind of informational data on it and grass data. Again, you have any questions, y'all go ahead and post them out. I'm gonna go ahead and pop out this webinar. I mean this survey. It might cover up your screen. If it does, simply click on your little, what I call like a little green icon shield on your taskbar and bring you back. Again, this webinar had a CEU credit to it. If you paid for your $10 CEU, please type in your email address on the chat pod. We'll sit here wait for more questions, James. James, thank you. Uh, really, really good information on this webinar.
Well, thank you,
Again,
Pete.
anybody, thank you, James. Again, if you all know anybody might want to be interested, this webinar is going to be posted online for one till the end of January, and we'll have that one CE credit till the end of January. Any questions? I don't see no questions coming up, James. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.
All righty. Thank you, Pete.